can usually tell a traveler from a vacationer based on their thoughts on cruises. And if you follow me on IG and TikTok, you can probably guess I'm a traveler, so I usually hate them. But I recently went on a cruise to Alaska that satisfied my traveler itch. Okay, maybe not completely, look at me being dramatic, but it was really nice. My family and I took a 7-day trip with stops in Ketchikan, which, to be honest, wasn't my favorite leg of the trip, Juneau, which definitely picked up the pace and felt a lot more fun, and Skagway, where I went on the best 5-hour train ride I have ever taken. We were on the Celebrity Edge, which was a big step away from the Caribbean cruises we usually take, but those are boring to me, so that's fine. I think what made this so different was the weather. It was way too cold to be anything like a typical tropical vacation, so it felt more adventurous than relaxing. But of course, it still had the typical cruise amenities like a deck pool, and it was like 50 degrees, so I don't know why that person was actually swimming in it. There was even an adults-only indoor pool, a gym, and a walking path to get your steps in. I mean, you could have ran too, but I don't do that. We stayed in the concierge class cabin, which was kind of small, but we had a balcony view and that was cool. And unfortunately, I didn't get any video because by the time I remembered, my family had already scattered their clothes everywhere and then it was too late. Whoops. Aww. The concierge class came with a few perks, like champagne and canapes delivered to the room every afternoon. But the canapes they were just... You know what? Let me just skip ahead to the food now. The food was my least favorite part of everything. The buffet food often lacked any sort of seasoning unless you were in the international section. Like, I'm talking, where the salt at? I was so disappointed. The pizza was the most consistently good thing. Maybe because it was made with love? I don't know. Even the dessert was just lacking. Most things tasted like the same thing in different fonts. And at a restaurant, I paid $50 for an overcooked seafood tower. But restaurant dining was at least more consistently good. Unfortunately, I forgot to book our complimentary dinner reservations in time, so we had to pay for them. But some were really good, like one called Le Petit Chef, where you watch a video of a tiny chef making your food. The servers are supposed to bring out the food at the same time the chef is done, but they only managed to do that once. Still cool. As for the drinks, I was on my Fit Fam life, so I didn't drink much, but I did do a martini flight tasting, and those were pretty good. Now, what made this cruise so great for travelers was the excursions, and for the most part, these did not disappoint. Our first stop was Ketchikan, and there wasn't a ton to do here, so we didn't book any excursions. We basically just walked around and took in the scenery. We tried to get something to eat at a diner, but the wait time was way too long. But we did take an Uber to Saxman Totem Park to get a closer look at the Alaskan native culture. We got back on the ship that day and set sail for Juneau. But before we got there, we took a trip through the Endicott Arm, which is a 30-mile-long waterway surrounded by granite cliffs and forests. It was stunning, like jaw-on-the-floor beautiful. You're surrounded by mountains and waterfalls, and you can see icebergs floating by in the water. We even saw a few seals hanging out on them. But the star of the show here is the mile-wide, 600-foot-tall Dawes Glacier. Sometimes when chunks of ice break off and crash into the sea, apparently you can hear echoes of them cracking and splashing into the water. And the captain was able to get us about 4 miles out, which got us a really great view. When we finally got to Juneau, we went to a traditional salmon bake, which is a community event where you gather over some fresh-caught salmon. The salmon wasn't seasoned either, but it was still good because it was so fresh. And for dessert, I roasted some marshmallows like a true outdoors woman. At the site, some people were gold panning, but I wasn't about to struggle to find some gold specks, so I did not participate. After the bake, we got on a small boat and set off for some whale watching, where we also saw more glaciers. It took a while for us to actually see any whales, but when we did, it was really cool. We mostly only saw blowhole spouts and some tails. One did jump out of the water, but only one person on our tour got to see it because we were all looking in a different direction, of course. The next city we went to was Skagway. Here, we took a tour on the White Pass and Yukon Route Railway, which follows the historic journey miners took during the Klondike Gold Rush. I was skeptical of how great a 5-hour train ride could be, but with these views, I completely understood the hype. Also, shout out to my Samsung Galaxy S24 for these crisp images. Somewhere in the middle of the trip, we stopped at a walking trail and museum to learn a little bit more about the history of the Stampeders. And by the end, I was so tired, mostly because we woke up early, but the ride was also rocking me to sleep. We took a bus back and saw a few more sights which were nearly as beautiful as the ones we saw on the train. Then back to Skagway and the ship we went. The last stop we made was Victoria, British Columbia, which was very nice and Canadian. We didn't stay here very long and just took a bus tour to a street market, so I definitely have to come back. Now, when we weren't on dry land, I did have to find something to do. And the ship had a lot of activities, most of which were trying to get your money. But I did happen to find a few things that were entertaining enough to keep me occupied. On the first day, I checked out the karaoke night, which was done the way karaoke should be, with mediocre singing and plenty of alcohol. I didn't join because I can't take that kind of embarrassment. Like, in my head, I was killing this song. But where was the key? Was it in the room with us? There were also performances, but the one I saw was giving very much off Broadway. Like Broadway couldn't even be reached on the telephone off. But the acrobats deserved a raise. They really stole the show. They weren't performing for a cruise, they were performing for the top spot on America's Got Talent. There were other activities that mostly took place in a spot called The Club, where they played games like Finish the Song and even indoor curling, which was surprisingly entertaining. And of course, no cruise is complete without the casino. We only played like $40 and quit pretty quickly, but we made about $56 before it got too deep for our comfort. I have to say, I really enjoyed this trip, but if you're gonna go on a cruise to Alaska, make sure that you save your money. A lot of the fun things to do start at like $300 per person, which I think is ridiculous, but they know if they set these prices, there is someone who is willing to pay them. It's me, I'm someone. And a cruise might be one of the best ways to visit Alaska because certain parts are kind of difficult to get to, like Juneau is only accessible by air and sea. But if you love beautiful sights and nature, Alaska is definitely worth a visit, even if the food might be unseasoned. Be sure to like and subscribe for more travel stories and travel content.